Welcome to the podcast. Today's chat serves as like a companion to the written piece that we did with today's guest, who we'll introduce in a sec. So think of it as like a short, little intimate convo where we can further explore how one of my favorite people thinks and how he lives and what's inspiring him. So some reflections and some questions and a little portal into how Stefan moves through the world. So before we dive in, I'd love to welcome Stefan Storm. So how are you?
Thank you. I'm very well, thanks. I'm a bit like post sweating from going for a cross country ski.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I went to, it's a really good exercise, and it's sort of yeah. So that's what I was doing this afternoon.
I've never
So
tried. I've only
it,
skied just a little bit, but never cross country. That's where you wear the flat shoes and kind of
exactly.
hike. Yeah.
No, wait, flat shoe. Well, yes, they're flat shoes, but you basically go like this, but with
Uh-huh,
skis.
uh-huh. Oh, regular skis. There's another thing where it's like a different type of shoe that's shorter, not an actual ski. I don't know what that's called. I thought that was called cross country, but what do I know?
Well, what do I know? It's this English not being my native language. Maybe I'm saying the wrong
Fair.
thing.
We'll Google after and compare notes.
Yes.
So yeah, share a little bit about yourself and maybe assume some folks might not have read the written piece. So just
Yes.
to kick us off, what should people know about you?
I am a Swedish creative. I mostly do songwriting and music producing. I had a pop band when I was younger, and that's sort of how I got into music. It was me and my best friend. We went to school together, and at the end of school, we decided to try to form a band. And this was the day of MySpace, if you remember that. So it's an
Oh yes.
early social network platform where you could, where it was quite big with music, so you could put your music up there, and some artists really kicked off on MySpace and got really big. And we got lucky that we had a real MySpace hype as well.
Hmm.
We never got as big post that. Like MySpace was sort of where it peaked, but that sort of quite quickly we went from just having started this band to then moving to London, getting signed over there, like getting a major management company and la da da, and like that was sort of how my musical journey started. And a lot of what I do today still sort of harkens back to those days and connections I've made from there.
That's amazing. I was a big MySpace user. I think we're the same age. You're 39,
Yeah.
40, 39.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if I found Sound of Arrows through MySpace or how that all originated, because that was also, as you know, the era of pirating a lot and just, Blogspot and all the
Yeah.
different music roundups and ways of sharing those tastes was so different back then. But it was so funny that we came to work together because I had already been such a fan of
Yeah.
your work. And in my eyes, you were like a very big deal. So super cool to have that chance. But um,
It
no,
is quite funny how it can work like that. Like I have some acts that I because I grew up loving music and like living for it and like consuming not just the music but the music videos, the artwork, the credits and blah blah blah. And it is kind of funny how some acts have played a really big part in my life, and I'm then sort of, later on when you kind of realize that maybe they weren't as big as you thought
mhm.
back then. And it is a not that that lessens it in any
No,
way.
not at
It's
all.
just kind of funny that I remember this one Irish artist called Nina Hines that I loved. Like she was a bit like electronic singer songwriter.
Hmm.
Could I compare it? Well, she was like Bjork adjacent back then.
Hmm.
And and I was absolutely obsessed, and I would like call up, this is me at like what, 15, 16. I would call up a record label in Ireland and probably thinking that this is like, a big office with people, but this is actually, I found out later, it's just this one guy who just had these
Hmm.
calls from Sweden from this really like strange little boy. And I made a fan site for her and like created a forum, and because stats weren't readily available back then, and also the naivety of youth, but I was creating probably this fan site for like maybe three other people or something. And that I've connected with her now, and she's
Hmm.
talks about how it's quite funny that she just had
That's
this really
awesome.
rabid fan from like rural Sweden who's sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I love it.
still love her music, and she's a really cool artist living in Berlin now. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's just
What was the
really
fan site on, like GeoCities or something? Maybe not that old. I feel like GeoCities was like
no.
90s.
It wasn't GeoCities. Homestead? I think it might have been something called Homestead. I do remember having a few web pages there, but yeah.
But you've had some other big full circle moments. Like, I mean, congrats on the Alison Goldfrapp album. That was
Well, thank
so
you.
cool and such a huge, beautiful undertaking, I'm sure. What was it like to work with her on that album?
It was, I mean, I've been such a fan of hers ever since, like around the same time that I started, my Nina Hines fan site. I read about Allison like early days of Goldfrapp and Q magazine at the local library. And that was the
Hmm.
time when, like, I don't think I even had internet at home. So I would go to the library and read up about music, and then I would dream about that music because you couldn't hear it. So I would just be reading about this cinematic trip hop duo fronted by this icy cool woman who once yodeled on stage while milking a cow. I remember that article. I think she did it for some art piece or something at art school, but they sort of made it into this PR story. And I bought their first album, the act being Goldfrapp, the duo. Their first album, Felt
Felt
Mountain,
Mountain, classic.
which is like, yeah, a like late trip hop album that was just absolutely beautiful, sort of timeless. It got grouped together with trip hop, but like actually listening to it now, like it doesn't
No.
really have all that much to do with it, just more that it was slow and moody. But yeah, I bought it when I was on a road trip with my parents through France, and I was like listening to it on my headphones at like
Yeah.
15, 16, and I fell in love with them and her, and yeah, just been a really big fan. With not only is, I mean, her voice is incredible, her songwriting or their songwriting is great, the lyrics are really evocative, but also, and I mean, the productions are beautiful, melodies, everything. But not only that, but they also, the attention they have to the aesthetics, to their aesthetics, has always been, well, that really resonated with me, and I've always really liked that part of creativity or music, that it also, like, that music and aesthetics go hand in hand when it sort of creates a world. And I think
Hmm.
Goldfrapp are one of the absolute like top acts when
Yeah.
it comes to that. When, like, 15 or more 20 years later, at like 35 or something, i I had done an album for a Norwegian artist called Annie that was sort of did the rounds on the internet and got like a little bit of a hype. And turns out Allison had listened to it and really liked it, and she reached out,
Mm.
and I just couldn't believe my
Yeah.
luck, but just that it was a real, what you were saying, a full circle moment.
That's amazing. Yeah, I too can remember vividly buying that album. I think I was 14 or 15, like 2000. Such a singular, unusual album, like very cinematic. Almost feels like you're like in a spy movie the whole time, but like with clowns going on in the background or
Yeah,
something. Just so
yeah,
cool. And of course, my parents are like, "What is this unusual music you're playing all the time?"
yeah,
But that's so amazing that you are able to have that powerful full circle moment and connection to her.
yeah.
So if
That was a
anyone
real,
hasn't listened, you got to check it out. What's
yeah.
called Flux?
Yes, Allison's latest album, Flux. And it's that me and Allison did maybe like 5 or 6 tracks on the album, and then she and this great producer and songwriter Richard X did the other ones. And a guy called Ghost Culture that I actually haven't met. He did one of the tracks, but Richard was sort of, he did some production work on my tracks as well. And then he's a great, superb producer and a great guy. Anyway, so it was, yeah, it was great. That is the funny thing with like being a music fan and then, getting into the industry. There's so many people who I idolized when I was a teenager, and I mean I still do. That I end up meeting, you bump into them, and you work with people, and it is a real sort of yeah, it's it is incredible to be around that sort of creativity and just to see how people work and how everyone's process is so different. Like, and as it is with any creative endeavor, like the how you get to an end result can vary so much and can be like really really strict and structured,
Mm,
or it can be completely freewheeling and sort of
mm,
experimenting and just chipping away and finding your way
mm,
there.
mhm.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see how people work.
Yeah. Yeah, I observed that even just from the couple of interactions we've had. And I think I put that in the written piece as well. Just you were mentioning earlier, thinking kind of zoomed out, not just about the music, but about the whole ecosystem of the experience you're creating and building really like a lived in feeling or a whole cinematic universe, if you will. Certainly with Annie, you definitely did that with all of the artwork and the motifs that you were exploring. It felt very much like this kind of still pop, but like noiry, mysterious
Yeah.
mood that you were setting and envisioning a place like a motel and a car you drive up. How does that usually work with others if you're enacting this producer role? Is it common to go about the work in that way, this kind of like multi-sensory, multidisciplinary kind of approach, or what does that
I
usually look like for you?
I don't think it's that common, but those are the people that I gravitate towards and the acts and collaborators that I gravitate towards. But I think it can also probably be at times a little bit like that way of working isn't for everyone. Like wanting, because I really only want to work with someone if I also like their world and their aesthetic and like the sort of it's not only about the music for me. And at times I think I could be it can get a little bit like, I've definitely worked with some people who find that thing invasive, which I completely understand. Why would your songwriting partner and producer, on a few things, want to see what ideas you have of the promo images or how the album cover is going to look or whatnot. Like I get that some people aren't always inviting you into or inviting me into that process, but I just find it to be so important. Just how
Mm-hmm.
it's not only about how it sounds, it's about how it looks and just like what sort of feeling it conveys. It also aesthetics to me, it really sort of plays into how what sort of sounds I would choose. The thing with the Annie album where we collaborated and I asked you to make a scent and we had this really we went quite far down that road of creating a perfume, like a high end perfume, because the album was called Dark Hearts and the perfume was going to be like the album. And I still think it's a great idea. I think it just ended up being a bit too costly, what with tariffs and imports and exports and whatnot. But with that album, just the noir aesthetics and sort of it really like coming up in a way, it was almost like we came up with the world before I actually started making the music because just also the choice of how when it comes to the production of the album, I wanted it to sound a bit cheesy. Like, I'm not saying the songs are cheesy, but the sounds, like, I could have made it way more lush or like using different types of drum machines or synthesizers. But there's something about, I mean, it's obviously very inspired by Twin Peaks. And there is something so in the Twin Peaks soundtrack by Lynch and Angelo Badalamenti. But there is something like soap opera cheap in that
Mm-hmm.
music. Like it's so, it's quite, and I'm sure because Lynch and Badalamenti, they've done more lush things for Blue Velvet before. Nay, yes,
Mm-hmm.
Blue Velvet, like orchestral thing, but like when it came to Twin Peaks, it's very like basic and sort of there's like synthesized strings and a bit of a cheesy sound. And that was something that I really resonated and something that I wanted to bring for that album. And partly that sort of plays into the whole aesthetics of it as well. Yeah. Anyway, I'm
That's
rambling.
amazing. You got to be like a bit of a, well, you were like a creative director with her, it sounds like, in all of the different lanes for that
Yeah.
experience, even beyond the music, which is so cool.
Yes, but also like I mean, I could be that because Annie had a similar vision, so we could find a
Right.
way. She pulled just as much of a weight when it comes to that, but it's definitely I think had I not been doing music, I would have yeah, would have been a creative director, I feel.
Yeah,
Even
can
though
see
that is
that.
a, it's like, how does one find that role? I don't know.
But in this idea of like building a filmic universe, I know film is also something that's really important to you. Is that something that's always informing on your approach when you're producing or writing, or how does that all play into each other?
Yes, I would say before I was a music nerd, I was a film nerd. Like I grew up with my older brother is a film director and my uncle is an actor. And I was like completely immersed in films and sort of didn't have, well, this goes for a lot of creative people, but maybe didn't have that many friends as a kid. And then I sort of ventured out into like, watching films on VHS and just like losing myself in those worlds. So that was sort of my first love.
Hmm.
So it makes sense that it sort of influences everything I do. And to be honest, most times when I make a project or do an album, or I kind of almost think more about film references than music references. Like, what's the aesthetic, what's the style, what's the world? Yeah, what we were talking about before. So, film informs what I do greatly. I think the closest collaborators I've had over the years, and this includes Allison now and Annie and others, we've shared a love for film. Like that is a lot of the reference points.
It's amazing. You mentioned like going to the video store, getting the VHSs. I definitely remember that too. And some of those early films that just like, you see them, you're like, what the fuck did I just see? What were some of those early influences for you in film?
Wow. I mean, I was like a lot of people our age, I was obsessed with the sort of 80s fantasy wave.
Brand.
Exactly. Even though I came to them later, because in Sweden, like when I grew up, they weren't really available. They were just like being born in 86, and then maybe like my peak film interest, or in those sort of films, I'd be 10. So that'd be 96. And by that time, those films were out of circulation. I remember like trying, because I read about them in the library in some book or whatnot, and I tried desperately to find The Dark Crystal and
So good.
Labyrinth as well. And I called up all the video stores in my hometown, like trying to see who had Dark Crystal or Labyrinth. I ended up being able to I managed to track down the Dark Crystal, but Labyrinth turned out to be way harder. And yeah, it took me a good year or two to find it. And I was like, it was me and my brother, we went to the cinema together, and then he got talking with a friend of a friend, and I don't know, I was so obsessed with the idea of Labyrinth that I probably talked about it to anyone I could meet, which is maybe why I also didn't have that many friends. So I must have said it to him. I don't know how we came to talk about it. And this guy just said, "Oh yeah, I have it at home." And I was
Yeah.
like it was like it was, and I remember the first time seeing that film. It didn't really live up to like my expectations. What does? Like nothing can really, but I
Hmm.
remember vividly watching it in that opening segment with the CGI owl. I saw it in my
Hmm.
I was living out in the garage at the time, and it was, yeah. But there's something so beautiful that does get lost, and not to harp on about like that things were better before and blah blah blah, but there's something about that desire, or that like dreaming about something, or getting to fantasize about what this film could be, or reading about Fount Mountain by Goldfrapp and being like, wow, this sounds so interesting, instead of just getting it like directly, being able to check it out, like letting the legend grow and
Yeah.
taking on a much bigger importance. And of course, that plays into it being a kid or a teenager, but I don't think that's solely it. I think we'd all do well with dreaming a little bit more about things, and like giving art and creativity a little bit more respect, with letting it sort of breathe and not be just,
Mm.
queued up for like as soon as you finish one film,
On to
there's
the
like
next.
shoving you stuff
Yeah.
right into your face. There's no room to like
Hmm.
process something, to sort of land in something. And I mean, I'm also guilty of this because as soon as I'm out walking with the dogs, I put in a podcast, listen to something, then on to the next. So it's like constantly consuming things. But there is something beautiful about partly letting things breathe after you've consumed them, but also to dream of the thing, of like,
Yeah, I
there
feel
is,
you.
I guess there's a bit of that. I mean, I'm not alone in like going around dreaming about like what could Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey be? It's gonna be, not that I'm the biggest Nolan head, but there's something about him doing The Odyssey. The Odyssey was also, I was obsessed with Greek myths as a kid, which is
Hmm.
not like, which is quite closely, well, it's fantasy, so
Hmm.
but just the idea that we're getting like a budget version of the Odyssey made by someone who has a really filmic approach, and like
Mm.
it's just, yeah. So in a that I do sort of go around daydreaming a bit about that film as though I was
That's
that
good.
guy.
I'm going to shift my mindset because I'm a little bit cynical about it. I don't know why. This like huge blockbuster version of the Odyssey, for some reason, I'm perceiving it in this like turning my nose up way. But I'm going to shift my mindset to be more dreamlike to your
Yeah,
cue. I like that a lot more. I
I think
don't
I've
know.
been. I'm very much that way about most things these days
Mm.
because a lot of culture or a lot of pop culture just feels so like all the life has been sort of sucked out of it because it has to like fit this thing and that thing, like all these
Hmm.
criterias, and going through a system of being chewed out. It's like
Yeah,
how films are made to. I canceled my Netflix subscription and Showtime and HBO the other month because I was just like I'd had
a
it
lot.
with just how, well, partly how much stuff there is out there, but also the sort of that everything has gotten so streamlined into how they make things that they're
Hmm.
supposed to. There's always been a recipe to things, of course, but there's something so lifeless
Yeah.
with a lot of these productions that are all well made and they're well written, they're well blah blah blah, but it's all like a big swamp of mid.
Hmm. You're making me think of I mean, this is about you, but if you haven't seen it, I wanted to queue up Resurrection. Did you see that yet? By
No.
Bi Gan. It's a Chinese film that won a special prize at Cannes last year. And it's very much a reference to pretty much all of cinematic history in terms of the visual references and the stylistic execution. It's
Yeah.
like dreamlike vignettes, but it still manages to really do its own thing. And I left that 3 hour movie feeling that kind of wondrous, like, wow,
Oh
I haven't
wow.
felt this. So it's quite special in that it's literally referencing, like, it goes back to German Expressionism and Caligari in the first segment, and it kind of ends in a more modern place with this kind of fake wonder of like a vampire romance story. So it manages to do a lot, but
Oh
still
wow.
feel very original, and kind of encapsulates that kind of like idea of, everything's been done, but this film really sort of stands on its own despite being about that, and
Yeah.
achieves something that's really singular. And I hadn't felt that way, like you were describing, of like, the churn of so much stuff that just comes out anymore, and actually sitting and feeling the impact of the movie. So it's definitely one you lean forward into and like take it in. It's quite a lot.
Okay, I
Very
definitely want to
special.
check that one out. I felt that way. I mean, I feel that way from time to time with the pop culture still, but with the one battle after another, I just thought that was
Mm.
absolutely incredible. Like one of the best things I think I've ever seen. I was so relieved to see something as well that was that good, but also that had a message. That being said, I'm not sure what the message is, but just like something potent, like people caring about something and fighting for a cause, and just like I just walked out of it absolutely elated.
I felt the same way. The one thing that bothered me, did you notice the eyelashes on? I can't think of her name. I feel so bad. She
Yeah,
just won a
Tatiana.
Golden Globe last night. They did these lashes where there was like one long one just in the
Yes,
middle of each eye.
yes,
Very distracting, but otherwise agree 100% with everything that you said. And Sean Penn, I mean, so unhinged and
yeah,
a little bit campy in a way that worked,
yes,
his performance
yes,
too, which was,
yes.
I'm sure intentional, but so fun.
But I think I read somewhere that he played it as like a gay man, like it was like someone who's like suppressed his sexuality so much that it was just like gone absolutely insane and going after the most voluptuous sort of uh, yeah.
Well, we could probably talk film forever. I'm curious some of your favorites, but maybe we'll pivot into uncharted territory. You spoke at length in your interview, the written piece about navigating mental health and privilege and kind of the overwhelming currents, let's call them, of global politics and just everything, climate change. So I know offline we talked a little bit about like your approach isn't one of sort of being overly optimistic or woo woo on issues. So I wanted to give you a space to talk about that, and maybe not in a kind of granola way. Like, are there ways that you're tapping into activism? Like, what's keeping you sane? Is your approach to be, activated and give back? Are you more about like grounding, or are there particular tips that you might share, or ways that you're finding some sense of solace or directionality through these challenging times?
I have often struggled a bit with activism, not the concept of it, but for me, because I've always sort of, that I could always, to a certain extent, or like, not all issues, of course, but a lot of issues I could be like, oh, well, why haven't been more politically active? Because even though I have my stance, I've always been able to like look at the other side and be like, oh, well, I mean, that's sort of maybe for them it makes sense, or believing in the good of man and empathy and sort of that most people sort of want the same thing, but just approach it very differently. But I think as of late, it's gotten quite apparent that maybe that isn't the case, or people are so misled and have gotten misguided that now, especially after seeing one battle after another, I was like, maybe it's time. Like, maybe I should actually start getting into activism or something. I don't have any kids. I don't have like what do I don't have anything really to risk in that sense. So not that one has to do risky activism, but I feel that's what that is almost being called for now, because it's like this sort of empathy for all and peace and understanding. I don't know, like where is it?
Not working.
It's not working. So I don't know what the future holds, but like historically, I've not done much. I've sort of lately, the last few years, I've like pivoted more and more into caring about animal rights and that being a big issue for me. Yeah, I was sort of not quite giving up on humanity, but I just find it to be so yeah, just lately I've thought more about the welfare of the planet and animals than other humans, which sounds quite defeatist and pessimistic, but it's just like where my mind has sort of gone to. And not to say that like that is the more important thing. That's not at all. It's just like where my mind has pivoted.
I know your dogs play a big part of your life, so maybe is that influencing your interest in animal rights more? How integral are your dogs in your daily life and routine?
They're like they dictate my daily life and routine, and maybe to a like yeah, maybe to an extreme extent. I very much sort of let them. Well, I sort of plan my day around my dogs, which I guess people do. I'm not unique in that way, and people who have kids plan their day around their kids. But I've yeah, lately as I've gotten more work, lately I was like, oh, maybe like being out with them 4 hours a day is a bit excessive to like get in a full work day.
That's awesome. What are you doing for 4 hours out with them? Like hiking, or
Yeah.
what's the routine?
Yeah,
Wow,
so it'd be like 40 minutes in the morning, and then it'd be like maybe like 2 hours in before lunch, and then that's like what okay, maybe say between 3 and 4 hours,
that's
and
pretty
then
generous.
an hour in the afternoon and then a quickie at night. But I've just bought a house, so I'm hoping that will, with a yard, and that will eliminate one or two of these dog walks. So maybe I'll get some more time to sit in the studio.
Congrats, that's a huge milestone.
Thank you.
Amazing. You mentioned earlier you're getting into reading more. What are some of those books that you're enjoying lately for folks to try out?
Well, I've reread just recently for maybe like the sixth time or something. It's this book that was recently made into a film called Train Dreams by
Oh yeah, Dennis Cooper.
Dennis
Tom
Johnson, I think it
Johnson,
is.
my bad.
Yeah. And I read it years back when it first came out, and it's a book I've come back to many times because it's like it's just a short novel, but in these 100 pages or so, it's like encompasses this vast, like it is a huge saga of a man's life and his sort of outlook on the world, and his it's like an ode to the simple life and like the simplicity of or the beauty and simplicity. It's a really sad book because a lot of sad things happen to him, but it's just like of someone who leads a is tenacious and is a good person. And just think, well, there's some it sort of starts off with a moral quandary where he's sort of partaken in something that wasn't very nice, and then he thinks it's cursed his life after that. So he goes
Mm.
through a lot of bad things, but he prevails, and just it's such a beautiful book with so the language is incredible. Like every sentence sort of holds could easily be 10 more sentences. Like it's so it's not dense, but it's yeah, it is. I can't recommend this book enough. So I've reread that recently. And
The film was beautiful too. I know you canceled your Netflix, so maybe you haven't seen it, but I was
well,
surprised by the film because I've found Netflix to be a bit trash often, more often than not.
I
But this one is an exception.
I wholly agree, and that was the last thing I watched before canceling it because I had I mean when I first read it like 10 or 15 years ago, I was like, oh, would make a beautiful film, and then they actually went and made a beautiful film out of it. It was incredible, but I mean, yeah, it's great that Netflix showed it, but what they did was they, to my knowledge, bought a Finnish film at a festival.
Oh, that
So
makes
it's
sense.
not
Okay. So
them
just distributing
developing
it, not
exactly,
producing it.
and distributing it in quite like a poor way in the sense that I would have loved to see it at the cinema, but that's just not
Hmm.
possible. Maybe in the States it
We do
ran,
that. Yeah. Here they'll
yeah,
do like
but
short
yeah,
releases
but
in New York and LA.
here they won't do that, and I just think it's so disrespectful to an industry that built their behemoth of a company to just
Mhm.
sideline cinemas in this way. I
Yeah,
find it really
I agree.
quite angry about it. So I would have
Well,
loved to have seen Train Dreams in the cinema.
they own a theater here called the Egyptian, and they'll
Yeah,
do screenings on film. I saw Frankenstein on film there.
yeah,
The acoustics of the building are terrible, but
yeah.
it's still quite beautiful to see those. But I mean, with their recent acquisitions, I fear this will only get worse in terms of distribution model. But we'll stay positive where we can for this conversation. Yeah, I want now. I need to read the book because I was quite affected by the film, but it
Yes.
sounds similarly sort of sparse and simple in a complimentary way, just like little vignettes, little moments.
Yeah,
That closing shot was so I was like crying with that beautiful closing shot, so impactful. That yeah, cool. Any other books you recommend?
well, I've recently reread also for like the third. And this is the thing, I obsess about books and then I keep going back to them. But I was rereading David Lynch's, like, it's a semi-autobiography called Room to Dream, where it's sort of one chapter he's written and then another chapter, the following chapter, this film historian journalist have written. That's really, really beautiful. It's such a great biography, and I find at times it's really, especially when my mind is sort of spinning, and when you're in deep in another creative project, like reading a biography can be really relaxing because it's like doesn't you don't need to use up your imagination as much as fiction.
That makes sense. I need to read that. I've only read his book on meditation,
Oh, yeah,
Catching the Big Fish. Is that what it's
yes,
called?
which
So
is
I'll add that to the list.
Catching the Big Fish is a lovely little book, but like Room to Dream is where it's at if you're interested in him and his life. And yeah,
It's awesome. It's not all that similar, but for some reason, when you were describing it, it reminded me of the John Waters book where he did the road trip. Do you know about this?
no,
So he wrote essentially two versions. One was a fiction, imagined bonkers John Waters version with drag queens and sex workers and all the things you would expect, and then alternating with what actually happened when he makes this cross country road trip from, I think, Baltimore to San Francisco. So again, not really that similar, but this kind of like dual storyline approach to writing is
Does it
interesting.
touch on his life and career, or is it mostly about this road trip?
No, it's just the container of that experience. The version, I suppose, it is in a way sort of encapsulates his approach because
Yeah.
of the like bonkers nature of the fictitious version of a or account of what happened. No, it doesn't at all talk to his process or anything. I can't believe he's still kicking. I think he has a
Yeah.
new film coming.
It is hardening that he is. I really felt when David Lynch passed, really felt like a dark, we're entering into a dark era because he was so bright and like such a good, reassuring presence of like the good in man and the beauty of creativity and living for
Yeah,
the
I'm
arts.
with
And
you.
yeah, I thought it was really, really affected me when he passed.
Well, when you come to LA, we can go visit his gravesite. I've been a bunch. It's beautiful,
Yes.
easy to find. The other great David Cronenberg still kicking. I saw he's acting more now. He's in this sequel to Ready or Not coming out. He's like
Wow.
85
Yeah.
something.
I haven't seen his new one, but I saw recently Crimes of the Future.
It's a good one.
It is a good one, but it's also so, it feels so unfinished. Like it is a
Hmm.
film that sort of, well, sort of, I'm just amazed that someone can write that script and be like, oh, well, that's done. That was a complete arc. Because it sort of just finishes. I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed watching it, but when it ended, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
how does one decide that this is how it's gonna be? Yeah.
I can't remember the ending. I need to revisit it. The new one is very small and like, I don't mean that in a negative way, but
No.
it's just depressing and quiet and small. I guess it's about loss and his personal loss,
Yeah.
but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts when you watch it if you do. But
I'll
I don't know if
definitely.
I'd say it was a favorite, but it's certainly worth seeing. I mean, amazing that he's still producing
Exactly. I
work and
always
stuff that's
also find
personal.
find it quite interesting to watch someone's or watch or read or listen to someone's later work when they're sort of maybe winding down a bit in life
Hmm.
or I mean even something as misguided as Megalopolis. I'd rather watch
Oh my
that
God.
any day over like all the mid vanilla schlock that just like I'd rather watch someone fail, that's who am I to say, but just something. Yeah, I'd rather watch someone try for something or reach for something.
Yeah, that was a fun one to see in theaters, even though obviously a miss, but an entertaining miss at every single swing.
Like it was the most baffling. I went with some pretty like we were a hardcore like film nerd group, and we were all like ready to like it. We'd heard that it was supposed to be terrible, and we were like, it cannot be as bad as people make it out to be. And you're just watching it, being like, it's worse. It is like what? But I mean, I've found it entertaining, and not in a way. I don't mean it that I was laughing at it or it wasn't entertaining in that way, but it was just so, it was kind of riveting to just see someone go for something. What it was, I don't know. What were the choices at every single point? I don't know, but it was kind of, yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Are even the casting throughout. I mean, on
Yeah.
the non-primary roles, I was
Yeah.
just confused throughout, but so fun. So, what do you have coming up? You know, you said you have a lot of work. Any creative projects that you're able to share a bit about that you're excited to bring over the finish line or jump into?
So I'm currently in the midst of doing a soundtrack for a feature film, which will be my first one. It's also something that I've really wanted to do in my career, and it's fun that it's come around that the opportunity I've got this opportunity. It's a Swedish film. It's like a revenge, queer revenge drama with cast by entirely by with what is the word, like new immigrants or yeah, but yeah, and it is a really potent, interesting direct, well, the story is really interesting and the director Alessio seems incredible. I've not seen the film yet, like they filmed it, but I'm now composing to the script. But yeah, it's a really exciting project with like a really good, what it stands for is really is something I believe in. Yeah, it's
So here you go. You're
yeah,
able to maybe get some of the activism stuff that you were talking
yeah,
about earlier through the
yeah,
work.
yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah.
What
And
is that like composing to a script? That must be interesting rather than
it,
having any visual reference.
yeah, exactly. I mean, now I've just sort of tried to find some motifs or themes or like figuring out the sonic world for it rather than like actually doing some finished pieces. Because that will be first when I see the film. Like that's, but now like trying to find as I read them, the characters and what are their themes, but it will for sure be completely different when I see it being acted out. I'm gonna see it for the rough cut tomorrow actually for the first time. So from tomorrow onwards, like it'll be a different yeah, it'll be a different story. That's when the real work starts. So that's
So
exciting.
sort of a sketch for now, and then you'll
Yeah,
build it out. That's great.
exactly.
So cool. Well, congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you.
As we look to wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share or something I should have asked that I didn't?
No, no.
I was trying to remember if we had, I know I had a video call with Annie, but I don't remember if we had our own. This might be our first time actually having a face to face conversation like this.
You and me, yeah.
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 So
Yeah,
great
that's right.
to
You
connect.
look so pristine, I have to say.
It's the lighting. I have
Come on, it's the
a
lighting
ring,
you
a
love.
ring light shining on me. In fact, you can see I am like, you can change the temperature.
Wow. Wow. See, I could clock you're a pro from the beginning.
Semi-pro, let's say. I'll
Yeah.
take it. Well, thanks for being so generous with your time and wisdom and inspirations. I can tell that we could keep nerding out on film forever ad nauseum here. So I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation. And for anyone watching, if you want to dive in even deeper with Stefan, you can go check out the written piece. And thank you again for joining. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Okay.
Stop recording. Thank you again.